There is something happening inside your mind right now that you've lived with your entire life, yet never once paused long enough to question. A silent current of thoughts, moving endlessly through your awareness, arising one after another as if they were deliberately crafted by you, as if they were the voice of your identity speaking its truth. And for decades, without resistance, without investigation, you accepted that narrative. You believed the thoughts were yours, that they originated from some central command within you, that they defined who you are, and that where your thoughts go, you must follow. But the moment you even slightly shift into observation, into simply watching the machinery of your mind instead of being swallowed by it, a fracture forms in the illusion. Something inside you begins to see what has always been present yet never recognized. Pause right now and observe. Don't force your mind to be quiet. Don't try to control anything. Just watch. Notice how a thought rises out of nowhere. You didn't summon it. You didn't sculpt it. You didn't decide, I will think this now. It simply appeared fully formed, like a message delivered from a source you cannot see. And then another thought comes, and another, each one arriving uninvited, unrequested, outside your command. This simple act of witnessing reveals something most human beings never discover in their entire lifetime. You are not the generator of thoughts. You are the space in which thoughts appear. Neuroscience has validated what ancient mystics have whispered for thousands of years. When you become aware of a thought, it is already old news. Your brain constructed it 300 to 500 milliseconds before your conscious mind registered it, meaning the you that claims ownership of the thought is actually late to the event. Consciousness doesn't create the thought. It notices it after it's already formed. The voice in your head that says, I think, is not the thinker. It is the narrator, the commentator, the interpreter. And when this truth hits you, it changes everything. Because if thoughts are not yours, if they arise on their own, then who are you? What have you been identifying with all this time? Every fear, every doubt, every limitation, every story you carried like a burden, none of it originated from the real you. They emerged from unconscious processes, old patterns, and collective fields you didn't even know you were tuned into. You've been fighting, believing, resisting, and reacting to thoughts that were never authored by the self you truly are. And the moment this recognition becomes real, not intellectual, but experiential, you feel something inside you expand. You realize for the first time that you are not trapped inside your mind. You are the witness, the awareness, the space where thoughts rise and dissolve. And from this point forward, the illusion can never fully reconstruct itself again. Now that the first crack has opened in the illusion, we go deeper into the mechanics of where thoughts actually come from. Because once you see the origin of your thoughts clearly, the entire structure of your inner world begins to reorganize. You've spent your whole life believing the mind is like a microphone. You speak into it, and thoughts come out. But in truth, the mind is more like a receiver, a sophisticated antenna picking up signals from layers of memory, emotion, conditioning, and collective fields you didn't even know you were connected to. And the most shocking part is this: the thoughts that appear in your awareness are often not responses to the present moment at all. They are echoes. Take a simple example. You're about to talk to someone about something important. Before the conversation even starts, thoughts begin to form. This is going to be uncomfortable. I need to prepare what to say. What if they react badly? These thoughts feel like they're about this moment, this person, this situation, but they're not. Your brain is scanning your history at lightning speed, retrieving old memories of tense conversations, replaying emotional imprints from years ago, and projecting them onto the present. The thought is not about the now. It is a recycled prediction pulled from the past. This is the true source code of your thinking. You are not thinking about life. You're thinking about your memories of life. And because you identify with these recycled patterns, you unknowingly carry the emotional weight of every previous experience into every new situation. This is why life feels repetitive, why the same fears return, why the same insecurities echo through your mind. You are not living in the present. You are living in a projection of the past. And here's the breakthrough. Once you recognize that thoughts arise from unconscious memory loops, they lose their authority, they lose their solidity, they lose the power to define you. Instead of believing the thought, you begin to investigate it. Where is this coming from? Whose voice is this? When did I first learn this? Is this truly about right now? Or is this a shadow from another time? With every question you ask, the illusion loses another layer. Neuroscience calls this metacognition, the ability to think about your thinking. But in spiritual traditions, this shift is known as awakening. The moment you observe a thought instead of becoming it, the center of gravity inside you moves. You are no longer the personality reacting to old scars. You are the awareness witnessing the mind's attempt to protect you using outdated information. This is the beginning of liberation. Because once you see that thoughts are memory echoes, you stop fighting them. You stop arguing with them. By now you've begun noticing something. Subtle but powerful, the mind operates independently of your will. Thoughts appear on their own schedule, as if there is a hidden factory inside your consciousness working around the clock, producing ideas, memories, judgments, and fears without consulting you. You may believe you are thinking these thoughts, but if you actually watch carefully, something astonishing becomes obvious. Thoughts behave more like visitors than residents. They come, they stay for a moment, and then they leave. None ask for permission. None wait for your approval. They simply emerge, live briefly, and dissolve. If you truly had control over your thoughts, you would think only the thoughts you want. You would never think a painful memory again. You would never spiral into anxiety. You would never relive old arguments. Imagine worst-case scenarios, or sabotage your own peace with self-doubt. Yet you do. Not because you choose to, but because the mind is conditioned to fire patterns automatically. It is a machine trained by years of repetition, emotional imprinting, and learned responses. And a machine, once programmed, executes its code whether you like it or not. This is why the simple experiment of try not to think for 60 seconds is so revolutionary. Almost no one can do it. Not because you're weak, not because you lack discipline, but because the mind does not stop generating content just because consciousness wants silence. Even when you intentionally create stillness, a thought sneaks in. Am I doing this right? Another pops up. This is harder than I expected. Then another. I shouldn't be thinking. Why am I thinking? Thoughts cascade like dominoes, uninvited, uncontrollable, automatic. And here is the key insight this reveals. If you cannot control the appearance of thoughts, then you cannot be the source of thoughts. You are the witness of the mind, not the mind itself. When this realization hits you, something loosens inside. You stop feeling responsible for every thought that passes through your awareness. You stop taking ownership of intrusive thoughts, fearful images, or unwanted mental noise. A deep compassion begins to replace the inner struggle. You realize the mind is not your enemy. It's simply a machine doing what it was trained to do. But here comes the deeper breakthrough. Just because you cannot control the appearance of thoughts doesn't mean you are powerless. You may not decide what thought arises, but you can decide whether you fuse with it or let it pass. Identification is optional, engagement is optional. Suffering arises not from the thought itself, but from the belief that the thought is you. When a storm moves through the sky is never harmed. As you keep observing your thoughts, something begins to shift, not suddenly but gradually, like light spreading across a horizon before sunrise. You start to sense a subtle separation between the thoughts that appear and the awareness that notices them. It's faint at first, almost fragile, but unmistakable. A quiet recognition forms inside you. The thoughts are happening, and you are watching. The mind moves, and something deeper stays still. This gap, this subtle distance between you and thinking, is the beginning of a completely different way of experiencing reality. Most people never feel this separation. They live entangled with their thoughts, fused to every mental narrative, every fear, every internal commentary as if their very life depends on it. But once you begin to witness thought instead of merging with it, you discover a truth so profound that it dissolves decades of unconscious conditioning. Thoughts are movements within consciousness, but they are not the consciousness itself. They are ripples, but you are the ocean. Watch closely. A thought appears, a memory, a worry, an interpretation. Immediately, the mind tries to pull you into it, to make you follow the thread, to make you believe the story. But now, instead of being pulled in, you start to see the mechanism. The thought arises, but you don't automatically go with it. For a second, maybe two, you remain rooted in the awareness that is watching. And in that gap, the spell breaks. The mind loses its unquestioned authority. This gap is small at first, barely noticeable. But with practice, it grows. And as it grows, something extraordinary becomes possible. You can experience the mind without being controlled by it. You can feel fear without becoming afraid. You can witness doubt without collapsing into insecurity. You can observe anger without losing yourself to it. When you no longer fuse with thoughts, emotions shift from overwhelming storms into passing waves. They rise, peak, and fade, all while a deeper stillness inside you remains untouched. This is what spiritual traditions call the beginning of awakening. Not mystical fireworks, not dramatic enlightenment, but simply the recognition that you are not the voice in your head. You are the awareness hearing the voice. You are the silent presence that thoughts cannot touch. And here's what's truly life-changing. Once the gap between awareness and thought stabilizes, you begin to experience reality directly instead of through mental interpretation. You see people without projecting past experiences onto them. You feel emotions without drowning in them. You make choices with clarity instead of automatic reactions. It's as if the noise of your inner world lowers just enough for the real world to come through. The mind doesn't suddenly disappear. Thoughts don't stop arising, but the difference is everything. The mind becomes an instrument, not a master. Thoughts become suggestions, not commands. You felt it for years, an invisible pressure, subtle but persistent. Like a hand on your back guiding you toward a reality you've been too afraid to claim. Not because you doubt the possibility, but because you sense the magnitude of who you would have to become to truly step into it. This tension isn't punishment. It's the universe tightening the space around your old identity, making it impossible for you to remain who you once were. Everything that used to soothe you now feels hollow. Every habit that once defined you now feels like borrowed clothing that no longer fits. Even the thoughts you relied on for stability have begun to dissolve, leaving behind an unsettling quiet that forces you to confront the truth you've avoided. The truth is simple. Your old self has exhausted its timeline. Its frequency is outdated, incompatible with the reality your subconscious has already selected. And because of that mismatch, life has begun recalibrating itself around you. People fall away without explanation. Opportunities you once chased now feel meaningless. Patterns you repeated for years suddenly break as if snapped from the inside. This is not chaos, it is alignment. You are being extracted from the vibration you once lived in and moved into a field where your potential is no longer optional but required. This transition is uncomfortable because the human mind clings to familiarity, even when familiarity hurts. But quantum reality doesn't care about comfort. It cares about coherence. And right now your energy is being pulled into coherence with a version of you who doesn't hesitate, doesn't shrink, doesn't negotiate with fear. That version exists already, fully formed, waiting like a shadow cast from your future. What you feel right now is the gravitational pull of that future self dragging you out of the density of your old life. The symptoms of this shift are unmistakable. Your emotions intensify. Time feels distorted. You sense things before they happen, feel truths before you can logically explain them. You notice synchronicities clustering around your awareness. Numbers, symbols, recurring thoughts, as if reality is whispering instructions encoded in patterns. This is not imagination. It's resonance. Your consciousness is tuning itself like an instrument to match a new frequency. And with every internal adjustment, your external world rearranges itself to reflect the shift. You're not losing control. You're losing the version of you that tried to survive by staying small. The strange part is that nothing around you seems to make logical sense anymore. Conversations feel different. People's motives feel transparent. And the places that once grounded you now feel foreign, almost incompatible with your current vibration. It's not that the world has changed. It's that you're no longer perceiving it from the frequency you used to occupy. Your mind is expanding faster than your environment can keep up. And this creates a feeling of detachment, as if you're watching your own life from a higher altitude. You're not disconnected. You're evolving. You're gaining access to layers of reality that your old identity was never capable of perceiving. And with this expanded perception comes an unsettling clarity. You begin to see the patterns you were trapped in, how you gave your power away in subtle ways, how you absorbed emotions that weren't yours, how you lived according to stories that were inherited rather than chosen. You witness your past self with compassion, understanding that they did the best they could, with the level of consciousness they had. But now, something within you refuses to return to that old version. The illusion has cracked. The limitations have been exposed. And once you see the truth, pretending becomes impossible. Your intuition sharpens in ways you can no longer dismiss. You sense more. You feel more. You read between lines instantly, catching signals that others overlook. You know when something aligns with your future timeline, and when it belongs to the past, you've already outgrown. It feels like an internal compass awakening, a guidance system that bypasses logic and communicates directly through resonance. Every yes vibrates in your chest. Every no weighs heavy in your stomach. You're no longer thinking your way through reality. You're navigating it energetically. But this awareness also creates conflict within you, because your old identity still tries to negotiate, still tries to drag you back into patterns that feel familiar but no longer fit. This is where the internal battle intensifies. The fear of stepping forward, the fear of letting go, the fear of becoming someone your past can no longer access. Yet the deeper truth is that you're not becoming someone new. You're returning to the version of yourself that was buried underneath survival, expectations, and self-doubt. You can feel your future self calling you quietly, insistently, like a frequency you can't ignore. This pull isn't imagination, it's physics. When two identical frequencies exist across timelines, they are drawn toward coherence. Your future self has already aligned with the reality you desire, and now that alignment is echoing backward through time, reorganizing your life so that you can meet it. That's why you feel this pressure. That's why everything is shifting. It's not collapse. It's convergence. You're not breaking down. You're breaking through. You've probably noticed the pull, the subtle but undeniable sensation that something ahead of you is waiting, watching, almost guiding your steps with an intelligence that feels both ancient and intimately personal. It shows up in the smallest moments. A sudden pause before you speak, a feeling to walk away from something without knowing why, a whisper of intuition,
telling you that the life you're heading
toward is nothing like the one you're leaving behind. This shift isn't random. It's not luck, coincidence, or chance. It's the quantum field responding to your internal recalibration. Your subconscious has already stepped into a higher timeline, but your physical reality is still catching up. That delay creates a strange experience, like living in two worlds at once. In one world, you're still functioning as the person you used to be. In the other, you're already vibrating at the level of the person you're becoming. This overlap creates friction, emotional intensity, random bursts of clarity followed by confusion, sudden waves of peace interrupted by unexplained anxiety. All of it is part of the merging process, where your old frequency dissolves and your new one stabilizes. But this transition isn't clean or gentle. It strips away everything you've been using as permission to stay small. People who once validated you now feel distant. Situations you tolerated suddenly feel unbearable. Conversations that once comforted you now feel empty. Scripted, disconnected from who you are. At first you think something is wrong with you, but eventually you realize you're not malfunctioning. You're evolving. You're shedding versions of yourself that were based on survival instead of truth. This evolution forces you to meet yourself in uncomfortable ways. The triggers you used to avoid now reveal insights. The emotions you pushed down now surface with messages. The silence you ran from now becomes a doorway. And in that doorway you find the part of you that was never afraid, never lost, never broken, just buried under years of social conditioning and inherited fear. That part of you is rising now, pushing through the cracks of your old identity like light leaking into a dark room. And here's the most surprising part. The more you step into this new frequency, the more you begin to notice how reality bends around your internal state. You think of someone and they appear. You imagine a possibility and signs begin forming around it. You release a desire, and a clearer version of it starts moving toward you. This isn't magic. This is alignment. The external world is simply responding to the coherence of your internal world. You're not becoming powerful. You're remembering that you already were. As you move deeper into this shift, you begin to understand something you were never taught. Reality doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you are. Not the version of you that you broadcast to others. Not the version shaped by expectations or fear, but the silent frequency vibrating underneath your thoughts. That frequency is your true signature. Your real identity. The one the universe listens to without hesitation. And lately that signature has been changing rapidly, pulling you into a timeline that feels both familiar and entirely new, as if you've walked this path before in another lifetime. You can sense it in the way your desires are refining themselves. The things you used to chase no longer hold the same power over you. You're not interested in impressing anyone. You're not driven by validation or noise. You're gravitating toward clarity, depth, resonance. You crave alignment over attention, truth over comfort, energy over appearances. And with each internal upgrade, the outer world reorganizes itself, removing anything that contradicts your new vibration. This can feel like loss, but in reality it's precision. The universe never subtracts without the intention to replace. These changes force you to confront the attachments that once defined your sense of security. People you relied on may no longer feel aligned. Environments you grew accustomed to may begin to drain you. Even your routines, your habits, your patterns, your comforts begin to feel like anchors holding you to a frequency you no longer belong to. This is where most people turn back, mistaking discomfort for danger. But what you're experiencing isn't destruction. It's dismantling. Your old life must fall apart to loosen its grip on your identity, and in that unraveling, you begin to notice the intelligence behind every shift. The timing of events becomes too precise to ignore. Situations rearrange themselves with eerie synchronicity. You find yourself at the right place, hearing the right words, meeting the right people, moments that feel orchestrated rather than accidental. You start realizing that manifestation isn't something you do. It's something you allow. The more you align your internal frequency, the more smoothly the external world aligns with it. This is the part of the journey where your future self becomes louder. You feel its presence in your decisions, your impulses, your sudden clarity. It doesn't speak through words. It speaks through knowing. A pull, a certainty, a quiet inner shift that tells you, this path is yours. And the more you trust that guidance, the less you need validation or proof. Reality begins to feel less like a series of random events and more like a coded conversation between you and the field. You're no longer walking toward your future. You're collapsing into it. There comes a point in this transition where you start realizing that the old ways of forcing, chasing, and pushing no longer work for you. It isn't because you've become complacent. It's because your energy has outgrown strategies rooted in scarcity. You can feel it in your body, the resistance, the exhaustion, the heaviness that rises every time you try to operate from an outdated identity. Your mind still remembers how to hustle, how to fight, how to survive, but your frequency is asking for something different now. It's asking for alignment, not effort, precision, not panic, intention, not desperation. This shift can feel disorienting because the world has conditioned you to believe that effort equals worthiness. You were taught to struggle as proof that you deserve what you want. But the quantum field doesn't operate on struggle. It operates on resonance. And lately, your resonance has been reorganizing itself so profoundly that your old habits simply can't anchor to it anymore. What once felt normal now feels abrasive. What once demanded your energy now falls flat. Even your ambitions are transforming, shedding layers of insecurity and fear until only the true desires remain. But here's where it gets confusing. As your frequency rises, your external life can temporarily look like it's collapsing. Plans stall, people disappear, opportunities fade, routines break. It's easy to mistake this for failure, but it's actually the opposite. This is the clearing phase, the point where the universe begins removing anything that cannot exist in the timeline you're shifting into. It is not rejection, it's realignment. The field is pruning your path so that only what matches your new vibration can remain. In this phase, you may feel an unusual stillness around you. A pause, a quiet, a sense that something is happening beneath the surface, even if you can't articulate what it is. This silence isn't emptiness, it's calibration. The universe is rearranging variables you cannot see, preparing the trajectory ahead of you. And while your mind may interpret this stillness as stagnation, your spirit recognizes it as preparation. You're not stuck. You're being positioned. During this period, your intuition becomes sharper than logic. Answers arrive before questions. Guidance shows up without explanation. You stop needing reasons and instead you start feeling truths. You may not know where you're going yet, but you can already sense the version of yourself waiting at the destination. That sense, subtle, steady, magnetic, is your new compass. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, you begin to trust this process. Not because you fully understand it, but because resisting it feels impossible. Something larger than your fears is carrying you forward. Something wiser than your doubts is shaping your timeline. Something deeper than your old identity is awakening. You're not falling apart. You're falling into alignment. At this stage, The subtle distinction between thought and awareness becomes impossible to ignore. You start noticing that every thought that arises carries a resonance, a frequency that either amplifies your alignment or distracts you from it. Fearful thoughts feel heavy, sluggish, and dense. Empowered thoughts feel light, fluid, and expansive. And here's the key. It's not about controlling which thoughts appear. You cannot stop the mind from generating its patterns, no matter how disciplined you are. What changes everything is recognizing that you are not the thinker. You are the awareness in which thoughts appear. The moment this recognition becomes experiential, life shifts. You begin to observe the mind as an instrument rather than a master. It no longer dictates your emotional state, no longer hijacks your energy, no longer defines your reality. You notice the thought arise, a memory, a worry, a judgment, and instead of fusing with it, you let it pass. You label it silently: planning thought, memory thought, fear thought, fantasy thought. There is no judgment, no resistance, no attachment. Each thought is acknowledged, and each thought dissolves back into the stream from which it came. The mind, once a raging river, begins to slow into a gentle current, predictable yet expansive, powerful yet entirely under observation. And then something extraordinary begins to occur. The quality of your attention changes. You stop broadcasting chaotic, fragmented frequencies into the field. You stop projecting unresolved fears, inherited limitations, and collective anxieties into your external reality. Instead, your energy begins to resonate from a coherent place, the spacious awareness that watches without interference. Your electromagnetic signature, measured scientifically as the field around your heart and nervous system, begins to stabilize. You are no longer reacting to past echoes or collective noise. You are broadcasting from the core of presence itself, and the field responds. This coherence manifests in subtle, synchronistic ways first. People show up who align with your frequency. Opportunities appear that previously felt impossible. Challenges still arise, but they are navigable, revealing rather than overwhelming. Reality no longer tests you to prove your worth. Reality begins to unfold in a manner that reflects your internal clarity. The universe is not chaotic. It has always been responsive. The only variable was you, entangled in thoughts that were never yours, broadcasting vibrations you mistakenly believed were true. The liberation here is profound. You are free from the tyranny of the mind. You are no longer chained to automated patterns. Your thoughts still arise, but they do not consume you. You witness without attachment. You observe without resistance. And in this witnessing, a deep intelligence emerges, one that is not reactive but creative, not anxious but magnetic, not fragmented but coherent. As this awareness deepens, you start to notice that your thoughts are not isolated. They are part of a vast network, a field far greater than your personal mind. Many of the patterns you assumed were uniquely yours are actually drawn from collective consciousness, a shared mental space that humanity taps into without realizing. News headlines, cultural narratives, social anxieties, and opinions from people you've never met feed into this field, entering your awareness as though they originated inside your own head. You think you are reacting to life, but most of the time, you are responding to echoes you inherited from the minds of others. Recognizing this is both disorienting and liberating. Disorienting because you realize you've been carrying burdens that were never yours to begin with. Liberating because once you identify these collective thought patterns, you can stop fueling them entirely. The key is observation without attachment. When a thought about something distant, irrelevant, or socially imposed arises, you do not have to engage. You can let it pass as easily as clouds drifting across the sky. This simple act reduces mental noise dramatically and recalibrates your personal frequency. You are no longer amplifying collective fears, limitations, and distractions. You are broadcasting from your own direct experience, your own awareness, your own alignment, and because the universe is responsive, reality starts to reorganize around this clearer signal. At first, this feels subtle. You notice your attention sharpening, your energy stabilizing, your internal dialogue softening. You feel less reactive. You notice patterns dissolving in relationships, work, and daily life. Situations that once triggered anxiety now pass without holding power over you. And slowly the synchronicities begin. Moments that defy probability. Opportunities that appear exactly when they are needed. Encounters that feel orchestrated rather than coincidental. The field is responding to the coherence you've created by stepping out of identification with thought. You also realize that many recurring thoughts are not truly about your present. They are old imprints replaying through the filter of memory, projecting onto now. By tracing thoughts back to their source, you begin to disentangle past from present. The fear of failure, the sense of inadequacy, the insecurities rooted in childhood, they were never reflections of who you are today. They were echoes from experiences that shaped you but do not define you. As you witness them, name them, and release them, their power over your life diminishes. And the most transformative aspect emerges. Once you stop reacting to collective noise and past echoes, your consciousness begins to broadcast its true frequency, the frequency of clarity, the frequency of presence, the frequency of awareness itself. Life responds to this signal. As this awareness solidifies, you begin to notice the subtle yet undeniable mechanism through which your thoughts shape your reality. It's not about wishful thinking or conscious effort. It's about frequency. Every thought, every emotional reaction, every identification creates a vibration that radiates from your nervous system into the field around you. This isn't speculative, it's measurable. The electromagnetic field generated by your heart and nervous system extends several feet from your body, influencing and interacting with the world at large. Every thought you identify with, every story you repeat to yourself, every unresolved emotional charge is broadcast outward, shaping the environment in subtle, profound ways. When you stop identifying with thought, when you witness it as a phenomenon passing through consciousness rather than a command you must obey, you alter that broadcast. The chaotic, fragmented frequencies of fear, limitation, and anxiety no longer dominate your field. Instead, a coherent, stable signal emerges. This signal resonates not from effort or manipulation, but from the quiet authority of awareness itself. And the world responds. People, situations, and opportunities begin to reflect your internal coherence. This is why manifestation seems effortless for those who have mastered this inner alignment. It's not about visualizing a specific outcome. It's about harmonizing with the frequency of your desired reality and allowing the field to respond naturally. The most powerful aspect of this practice is subtle. You realize that control over life has never been about manipulating outcomes. It has always been about managing identification. The thoughts you once believed dictated your choices are no longer the center of gravity. Instead, awareness occupies that center. You see thoughts arise and fall, emotions swell and fade, situations shift and evolve, all while the core of you remains undisturbed, spacious and coherent. This does not make life predictable or rigid. On the contrary, it allows you to engage with reality with unprecedented clarity. Choices emerge not from reaction but from resonance. Decisions are guided by alignment rather than fear. Action flows naturally, effortlessly, as if you are surfing a wave that has already been formed beneath your feet. With consistent practice, you begin to notice a new type of presence in your interactions. Conversations become more meaningful because you are no longer filtered through old patterns of thought. Challenges appear less threatening because your frequency is stable. The emotional charge of the past loses its grip, and you operate from the field of possibility rather than the memory of limitation. And as your internal coherence strengthens, the external world reflects it with increasing fidelity. The same universe that once seemed indifferent now responds in a way that feels intimate, intelligent, and alive. Once you realize that your awareness is the source of all resonance, the way reality responds to you transforms in ways subtle and profound. The thoughts you used to believe were commands now appear as passing clouds. And with that simple shift, your internal frequency stabilizes. You no longer unconsciously broadcast anxiety, limitation, or fear. Instead, the coherent presence of awareness radiates outward, altering your electromagnetic signature and, with it, the way the world unfolds around you. You begin to notice synchronicities that were invisible before, moments that feel orchestrated rather than random, connections that appear at precisely the right time, opportunities that manifest effortlessly. This is not luck or coincidence. This is the natural consequence of aligning your internal frequency with your true self. At first, these changes feel almost imperceptible. A conversation that once triggered you now passes without tension. A decision that once required struggle now emerges with clarity. Even the smallest moments, touching a leaf, feeling the warmth of sunlight, noticing the subtle expressions of someone nearby, seem to resonate with a deeper intelligence. Life is no longer experienced through the lens of mental patterns or emotional reactivity. You see directly, hear clearly, and feel truth without distortion. This is the essence of alignment, living in correspondence with the frequency of your own awareness, rather than the chaotic signals of thought identification. The implications are profound. You begin to notice how much of your previous life was spent responding to echoes of past experiences, absorbed fears from others, and societal programming. These patterns, once invisible, are now illuminated, and with recognition comes freedom. You no longer need to fight, resist, or suppress these mental currents. Observing them without attachment dissolves their power. Their influence fades as you realize they were never truly yours. This detachment doesn't create distance from life. It creates clarity. It allows you to act from resonance instead of reaction, to respond from coherence instead of fear, and to experience reality directly rather than through filters of thought. As this practice deepens, a powerful transformation begins to occur in your daily interactions. People respond differently. Situations that used to feel chaotic now have a sense of flow. Opportunities align more effortlessly. You are no longer bound by reactive patterns, by anxiety, by outdated beliefs. Instead, you operate from a field of possibility, where your intentions and your presence create ripple effects that influence the world around you. Even your physical body begins to resonate with this coherence. Posture, breathing, energy, and vitality align naturally with the frequency of awareness rather than thought. And in these moments, the realization becomes undeniable. You are not a passive observer of reality. As your awareness stabilizes, you begin to notice a phenomenon that was always happening, but never fully perceived: the collective thought field. Much of what occupies your mind each day is not generated by you, but absorbed from the vast network of human consciousness. News, social narratives, opinions of others, cultural fears, even the emotional atmosphere of the people around you. All of it seeps in, appearing as if it were your own. For decades, you've unconsciously identified with these thoughts, reacting to them, amplifying them, and broadcasting their frequency back into the field. Now, as awareness deepens, you see the pattern. You notice which thoughts are truly yours, arising from direct experience, and which belong to the collective pool, recycling patterns that have nothing to do with your present moment. This recognition is liberating. By identifying collective thoughts for what they are, you create a boundary between your personal frequency and the mass consciousness. You stop giving power to fears that are not yours, anxieties that were never based on your life, and judgments that don't belong to your experience. Instead, you reclaim the energy that was being drained by the constant absorption of external mental noise. Your field becomes coherent, your broadcast clear, and as your signal stabilizes, the universe responds with increased precision. Opportunities align, synchronicities cluster, and interactions feel effortless. You are no longer navigating life through the lens of inherited patterns. You are moving through a field that reflects your authentic resonance. To integrate this, you begin a disciplined practice of thought observation and categorization. At the end of each day, you review your mental activity. Thoughts arising from direct experience, what you saw, felt, or sensed, are noted and acknowledged. Thoughts originating from personal history, patterns, and memories are recognized as echoes, replaying old conditioning. Thoughts absorbed from the collective, concerns about distant events, opinions, cultural anxieties are observed, acknowledged, and consciously released without engagement. This daily practice is subtle but profound. Over time, type 3 thoughts, the collective noise, begin to lose their grip. Your attention and energy are no longer scattered across irrelevant mental currents. You become a clear, coherent field, broadcasting a frequency of presence rather than reaction. As this process continues, reality itself begins to respond differently. Life events no longer appear as challenges to be survived, but as reflections of your frequency. The world mirrors your internal coherence. Interactions, opportunities, and experiences align with the level of awareness you maintain, not with the chaotic content of the mind. With the collective thought field recognized and consciously managed, a deeper realization emerges. Your reality is not separate from you. Every interaction, every event, every synchronicity is a direct reflection of your internal frequency. Once identification with thought dissolves, the universe begins to respond to the resonance of awareness itself, not the chaotic signals of fear, doubt, or obligation. This is where manifestation stops being a series of forced actions, or mental exercises and becomes a natural, effortless reflection of your internal state. Your life no longer unfolds as a chain of reactions, but as a coherent expression of consciousness in alignment with the underlying field. The difference is subtle at first. You notice that your day flows with more ease, that decisions emerge with clarity, and that obstacles no longer feel like external impositions but like signposts guiding you toward coherence. Even emotional states change. Anxiety no longer grips you. Frustration fades more quickly. Anger becomes a signal, not a prison. You begin to realize that the content of thought is irrelevant. What matters is the space from which you observe it. From that space, the energy you emit is consistent, coherent, and magnetic. This energy is measurable. It affects not only your own nervous system, but also the systems of others around you, creating resonance and alignment in ways that words cannot describe. At this stage, the subtle intelligence of the universe begins to feel personal. Opportunities, people, and circumstances appear in precise alignment with your frequency, often before you even recognize a need. Conversations unfold perfectly. Meetings occur at exact moments, and resources arrive just when they are required. This is not luck or coincidence. It is the natural response of the field to a coherent broadcast. Your awareness has become the organizing principle of your experience. The internal state of alignment precedes the external manifestation. Thought is no longer the driving force. Awareness is. The next step is refinement. Maintaining this coherent state is a continuous practice. Even when external chaos arises, even when old mental patterns attempt to resurface, you maintain the witness, the awareness that observes without attachment. Each time you notice identification with thought, you return to the spacious presence within. Over time, this practice creates what can be described as awareness momentum. Your nervous system, your energy, and your perception begin to stabilize around this coherent frequency. Life stops pushing against you and instead begins to move with you. The final realization in this phase is profound. You are not manifesting from desire, will, or effort. You are manifesting from alignment. The world mirrors the vibrational signature of awareness itself. Now everything you have experienced throughout this journey converges into one simple but revolutionary truth. You are not the thinker. You are not the stream of memories, judgments, fears, or projections that arise unbidden in your mind. You are the awareness in which these thoughts appear. This awareness has always been present, untouched by circumstance, unaffected by external events, and infinitely coherent. Once you fully recognize this, your relationship with reality transforms completely. Life is no longer something that happens to you. It becomes a responsive mirror, reflecting the vibrational signature you carry in every moment. The consequences of this realization are profound and immediate. You no longer give power to the intrusive, chaotic patterns of thought. Old fears, inherited limitations, and collective anxieties lose their influence. The electromagnetic frequency you emit stabilizes. Your presence begins to shape reality with coherence rather than struggle. Opportunities, synchronicities, and aligned experiences appear effortlessly. Your nervous system, body, and mind all resonate in harmony with this deeper awareness. Life itself begins to feel intelligent, purposeful, and intimately connected to your internal state. At first, the changes are subtle. A conversation flows more naturally. A challenge arises, and instead of panic or reaction, clarity guides your actions. You begin to notice a shift in how others respond to you, how situations unfold, and how doors that were previously closed now open with ease. But as this practice deepens, the transformation becomes undeniable. You begin living in a new dimension of reality, one where observation, resonance, and awareness replace effort, fear, and identification. You are no longer responding to thought. Thought is responding to awareness. You are no longer trapped in the patterns of your past or the collective field. You are free to operate from the frequency of presence itself. This final stage is both liberation and empowerment. The old narrative of life as struggle, limitation, or reaction dissolves. You begin to recognize that manifestation is not about forcing events, controlling circumstances, or striving for outcomes. It is about embodying the state of coherent awareness, the silent, spacious, unshakable presence that naturally aligns reality with itself. Every moment becomes an opportunity to observe without attachment, to witness without judgment, and to radiate a frequency of clarity, power, and authenticity. The ultimate truth is this: the universe has always been responsive. It has always mirrored the frequency you emit. The only variable was you. Now that you see the distinction between thought and awareness, now that you understand your role as the observer rather than the thinker, you step into a life that was always possible but never accessible. From the old identity,